You're listening to the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast. I'm Sarah.
I'm Erin.
I'm Bree.
And I'm Rachel.
We're in the middle of Lent right now, the season of Lent in our church here, which means we're going to quiz you all on everything that you know about Lent, or at least that's what I think we're doing today. So hopefully we all aren't stumped about all things Lenten season. And I hear there's an essay question at the end of this, so you're just going to have to stick around for that. Rachel, this is yours. Take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. I actually really like Lent. Don't hate me. But
You love the Ember Days, don't you? That's like your favorite thing.
Oh no, I do love Ember Days, but but no, I like Lent. I like the way it sort of strips things away and brings us back to the essentials and helps us focus on what's really important.
Yeah.
So yeah, I go through Lent with a frown and also a smile on my face.
You can't smile during Lent? What?
I am thankful for all the things that Lent teaches me every year. It's a good gift. But there's a lot about Lent that I did not know. So I set out to learn a little bit more about it, and we'll see whether you guys can follow me on this trail of learning today. And we will see how smart you are when it comes to the Lent. First off, question number 1. What does the word Lent mean?
Oh, wow, that's a starter.
I feel
know.
like I should know this.
I feel like I do
like
know
I
this.
should too, but it was this complete surprise.
Hang on a
to
second.
me.
Is there a language origin that you could tell us to maybe
Etymology
help
of the word.
This isn't
Yeah.
a spelling bee, guys.
It is Old English / German Teutonic.
That's not helpful. I know I learned this.
I know, exactly. I'm sure I've heard it, and for the life of me, I can't remember.
I want to say it has something to do with spring, but that's Easter, isn't it?
It does have something to do with spring.
Oh,
You're
so
going to completely kick yourself when you hear this, because I had never known this.
Oh,
And,
maybe I don't know it then.
Okay.
like new beginning? I don't
no. So
It's
obvious.
right
when you know
there.
it.
I can feel
So
it.
this is from Aleiteia.org. The word is traced etymologically to an Old English word, lengthen, which is
Lengthen.
related to lengthen, referring to the
The season.
lengthening of the days. That
Oh! Sorry, I
Huh.
probably maxed out right there.
Yes, you did.
Makes sense, though.
Once you hear it, it makes
Bar.
such perfect sense. It simply means this is the time when the days are getting longer, lengthening. Lent.
Interesting.
It's so interesting how words get pulled into our church vocabulary.
For
Mm.
sure.
They don't have anything to do with church, but this is what they are now.
So I was surprised that it came from German and English and not Latin, since so many of our church festivals have their source in, liturgical Latin.
Yeah.
Lent does actually have a Latin name.
I was
you
going to
guess
ask.
what it is. What is the Latin term for Lent?
Man, these are hard questions.
Gosh,
Does the
you are
Latin
pulling no
also
punches.
mean lengthen?
It does not, but it also has a very literal meaning. Think about the season that comes right before Lent. This might
Winter?
no, the church season.
Oh.
Epiphany?
In pre-Vatican II, those of you who are one-year lectionary wonders.
I think that's going to be Sarah.
Well, that is the season of Epiphany.
Uh-huh.
Isn't there something in between?
Pre-Lent.
Which is?
Pre-Lent.
Gesima
Pre-Lent.
Sundays.
Yes! You're on the right track. So we've got Septuagesima, 70 days, Sexagesima, Quinquagesima.
Quinquagesima, right. I love that one. This is my favorite.
So we've got 70 days before Lent,
Those are
or
weird
before
words.
Easter, 60 days before Easter, 50 days before Easter. What do you think the 40 days before Easter are called?
Something with quattro.
Quadragesima.
Quadragesima?
Quadragesima.
Yes! I love these words. Free your face right now.
Because I'm 35 years old and I've never heard of any of this.
Quadragesima. Quite a mouthful, and I'm really not at all surprised that we opted to go with the 4-letter, 1-syllable Germanic word Lent because it's so much easier to say.
Gesima is so fun, though. I like them.
Yeah.
I don't.
They have their true fans.
They are really, I don't know. Somehow the word makes me uncomfortable. It's probably because I haven't like grown up with it, but it's just a weird word.
I'm okay with Septuagesima. I have a little trouble with Sexagesima.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't
Yeah.
imagine
like-
why.
Uh-huh.
This is scandalous today. Let's keep
So-
it rolling.
Quadragesima simply means 40 days. So
Okay.
this has, from quite a ways back, been a 40-day fast before Easter. Where on earth did we get that number, 40 days, for our Lenten fast?
40 days
40
in the
days
wilderness.
Yeah. The temptation of Jesus.
It's gotta be.
Uh-huh. You're quite right.
Yes!
So Jesus being driven out into the wilderness by the Holy Spirit to endure 40 days of fasting before his temptation. This was the event that helped inspire the final length of Lent. Because where Jesus goes, we follow.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously Lent is not mentioned in the Bible, but it is a very old tradition. If you had to guess a century, when did the practice of fasting for 40 days before Easter really begin?
2nd century.
Oh, wow.
That's really
I'm
old.
gonna go with 5th century.
I feel like this is a trick question. I think it's BC sometime.
What? BC?
I don't
Before Easter? They started
don't
fasting before Easter?
Was it? Maybe it wasn't Easter. Maybe it was adopted from another. Because like Passover, for example, happens about the same time, doesn't it?
Yeah, fair
Hmm.
enough.
Okay.
All right, so Sarah says 2nd century, Erin says 4th century. Bree, you want to
5th. I said
Fifth.
5th.
5th?
Yeah.
Okay,
century.
fine.
Bree, you want to price
I'm
us right
pressured.
this?
I'm gonna say the 1st century.
Hmm.
Okay. Well, let's see. Going by Price is Right rules,
Oh, no.
I'm going to have to give it to Sarah, who came
Yes!
the closest without
Ooh.
going over. But it's 4th century. I accidentally slipped. I don't know where my head is. This Lenten fast is really just dulling my brain cells here.
Erin was closer, though.
Erin was closer, but Sarah didn't go
But I
over.
overshot it.
She went
Yeah.
over.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, it's been going on since the 4th century, which is also, the earliest that we can trace our hard documentation for certain elements in our liturgies. There was a lot of development happening in the 4th century, as Christianity was becoming, legal. They were free to sort of flesh out some things. And so some really long-standing traditions date back to around that time.
Yeah.
However, Bree, you are right in that. I mean, obviously, Moses didn't observe Lent, but talk about fasting and spiritual discipline go all the way back to the Old Testament, and were certainly present both in, the Jewish people and in the early church. So you look at, for example, Paul's letter to the Corinthians, where he says, I discipline my body and keep it under control. You look at the gospel where Jesus says, when the bridegroom is gone, then people will fast. Then his followers will fast. And, there's this expectation, like Jesus says, not if you fast, but when you fast, that fasting is a part of, the Christian life. So even though it didn't really get formulated until the 4th century, it was definitely building on a foundation that had been laid from the very earliest days.
Yeah.
Things got even more specific during the Middle Ages. They loved their specifics in the Middle Ages, with theologians like Thomas Aquinas codifying Lenten fasting into a detailed and comprehensive set of austerities.
Of course.
And I really love the Middle Ages. I'm sure a lot of our listeners do too. Not
Great
just because
time. Those are good days, the Middle Ages.
the more I learned about it, the more interesting it is. It wasn't all knights and princesses. It was a lot of monks
Plague.
sitting in scriptariums and writing comic strips in the margins of their, sacred texts. So with the next few questions, because the Middle Ages were the high ages for Lenten fasting. We're going to focus in on how Christians observed Lent at that time. And a hat tip to the Society of Saint Pius X for an article on this topic. I'll link to all these sources in the show notes if you want to read more about this. So most of Lent, despite all these sort of very complicated rules, wasn't a complete fast where like you go without food all day and all night. It wasn't the sort of fast that we think of when we're, say, preparing for a colonoscopy. Some food was allowed. However, what you ate and how much and when were all highly regulated. There were 2 days in Lent that were called black fasts. And these are your standard, just don't eat at all during this day. So which do you think are the 2 days that were black fasts for the medieval Christians?
Good Friday?
Ash Wednesday and Good Friday.
Yes, ma'am. Yep.
Yeah!
So if you could get through those 2 days, you weren't going to starve in Lent. You might be tightening your belt. Another way that they regulated food intake during Lent was by having a sort of cutoff time that you would eat nothing until this time of day. Similar, think of Muslims observing Ramadan, not eating between when the sun rises and the sun sets.
Yep.
So what was the magic hour when people could start eating during Lent? It has a theological tie-in.
The third hour. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep, 3:00 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
So in the this idea of not eating until 3 p.m. at the hour when Jesus' suffering came to an end and he gave up his life on the cross, this was a way of honoring that. However, there was some cheating.
What?
Well, because
No.
monks worked really hard, you guys. It was hard to not eat until 3 in the afternoon when you're working in the fields. So as early as AD 800, the 3 p.m. breakfast gradually sort of inched its way up to 12 p.m. to give the hardworking monks a chance to maybe not faint as they went about their work.
So as long as they had sour wine with their lunch, they were okay.
Yes. But they still called the prayers that marked the end of the fast after the 9th hour of daylight. After 3 p.m., they call it nones, which is where we get our word noon. Because
Okay.
noon is when we are pretending that it is actually 3 p.m. so we can go ahead and have some food.
That's actually the order of liturgy we used for our wedding service.
You use nones?
Of course you did.
Oh, that's brilliant. You guys are my favorite.
Just nerds. We're just nerds.
We like it. We like that here.
So medieval church people didn't only restrict when they ate, but they also restricted what they ate. Now think back to our Mardi Gras quiz last year and about all the foods that had to be sort of used up before Lent. What foods were completely off limits? And spoiler alert, chocolate is not on the list.
Is chocolate even a thing for them?
No.
Yeah.
Probably
Dairy?
hot fat carbs. Basically any of those.
But also, like, wasn't part of the reason they did pancakes, like it's a pancake thing, because they were getting rid of their flour and I don't know, what is dairy? So milk and eggs, are those also out? I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Flour, milk, and eggs. That's what I'm saying. And then also, I feel like meat is a classic one.
Yeah, I
so
was
I'm
gonna
going to
put
say
meat
meat
on
as
there.
well. So that's going to leave you not a lot.
Vegetables.
Really.
That's all you
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, you're starting to get the hang of medieval Lent. So there
fun.
were no animal meats or fats, so you couldn't have anything fried. No fried brown lunch.
I miss
No
food.
eggs. And no
Okay,
dairy
yep.
products.
Yeah.
So milk, cheese, cream, butter, all of that is off the table, which leaves you bread, fish.
Okay, so flour was actually acceptable.
Flour was okay. It was
okay,
just,
that was pancakes are just to help use up the other
right.
things.
It's what you're
That's
frying
why
them
Okay,
in.
got it.
Yeah.
The flour is
Okay.
just to hold everything else
Okay.
together.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So you could have
Okay.
bread, you could have vegetables, and you could have fish.
That's
Okay.
not so
And-
bad.
No, it's not so bad. I feel like I'd be really pretty healthy by the end of the season if I
I like fish.
did that.
Fish
Be okay.
So,
I don't know.
but this
That's really lean.
It's
There's
really
no fat
lean.
in that at all. That's really lean.
I would miss cow.
Uh-huh.
You could also have watered down wine or beer.
Oh, wow.
And later on, after coffee and tea were introduced, they were allowed to,
Oh,
so long
good.
as you didn't put any
Hmm.
dairy product in them.
I would survive.
Hmm.
Coffee and
Sarah
almond
would
milk.
live.
I'm good.
It's true. The almond milk people would make out like bandits
Yep.
during this time because it was,
That is correct.
yes. But this particular group of foods, looking just practically at the season, was a very convenient set of foods to give up during this set of weeks in the springtime in an agrarian society. Why is this?
Hmm.
No refrigeration.
No refrigeration. Yep.
And they
I'm guessing chickens stop laying in the spring. I'm guessing, but that's my theory. And you want them to, and baby cows need the milk instead of the people.
Yes.
it always has something to do with baby cows.
Yep. No, that's it. Spring is the time of year when all the baby animals come along. And so you really don't want to be, if you can avoid that window when they need the milk, then once they're weaned off, then you can have it. And same with eggs. If you're going to raise a clutch of chicks,
You're right.
spring is
So
the
it's
time
not that
to
they
do it.
stop laying, but it's they're actually brooding
Yes.
instead of laying.
Mhm. And you obviously don't
Okay.
want to be killing any of your animals when you have no
No.
refrigeration, and also when you want them to be
Mm.
multiplying.
Yes.
So
Mhm.
there's a very practical reason as well
Okay.
that these particular foods
I will
are on the
point
list.
out, though, agrarian wise, leaving you with flour and vegetables and fish in the very early spring. It's not like there's a lot of vegetables at that time of year.
No.
So there is actually, it's pretty slim pickings.
So Bree's
Like-
comment about gruel, right on. You're going to be eating a lot of dried peas.
Yum. Delicious. I wish I lived in the Middle Ages. Gross.
I mean, they would have had like spices and herbs too, though, right?
If they weren't like poor.
The poor people.
Well, like they basically
Okay.
ate.
Onions and
wealthy.
garlic, those would have been.
I'm trying to find a silver lining, Sarah. They
Hey,
ate
man, onions and
wallpaper
garlic.
paste.
I can't even eat onions and garlic.
Do you know what the silver lining is, Bree?
What is
It's-
that?
Coffee.
It's Easter. Easter. That's the silver
Truth.
lining.
Yeah.
Sit tight. It's coming. However, there was one day of the week where they got a little break. They didn't get completely off. Which day of the week would this be?
Sunday
I
Yeah.
was going to say Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
or Friday because fish fries. But they're already eating fish.
Yeah, I feel like the advent of vegetable oils was a game changer in Lent
Plant-based
fasting.
oils.
Uh-huh.
No longer frying that fish
Yeah.
in lard.
Mm.
Boiling it, more likely. They're just having boiled fish in gruel.
Disgusting.
Wow.
One way that they would do it was they would
Dried.
salt all the fish and then they had to soak it
Yeah.
to get some of the salt off before they cooked
Uh-huh.
it. Doesn't sound particularly yummy.
No.
Obviously, most Christians today do not fast during Lent in this heavy-handed way. Martin Luther, despite the fact that he did quite a lot of fasting in his life himself, and the other reformers began the work of dismantling the law-based system of Lenten fasting and leaving Lent more to the conscience and freedom of individual Christians. Even Catholics followed suit, sort of lightening up the restrictions over the years until by the 1960s, Lenten fasting began to look pretty tame by medieval standards. Pope Paul VI's 1966 Apostolic Constitution Penitemini, quote, reduced Lenten practice to 2 lines, no meat allowed on Fridays in Lent, and 1 meal with 2 collations, that's small snacks, allowed on Ash Wednesday and Good Friday. So I feel like that's doable.
That's very reasonable.
Yeah.
There is one church body that still mandates a fast for its members that might look pretty familiar to people in the Middle Ages. Can you guess, or do you know which church body this is?
Orthodox.
Yes.
Yep. I have Orthodox family members.
Do they do a lot of complaining this time of year?
No, but I know she has a whole separate set of recipes for the times of year when there's lots of things.
They also are brooding.
Yes.
Well, that's the thing. If you're pregnant or nursing, you don't have to follow the rules, or like a certain age of kids don't do it either. So if you just keep having babies, then you never have to do any of the fasting.
Yeah, time it just right.
Well, that's a way to encourage population growth right there. So this is from Wikipedia, their helpful entry on Eastern Orthodox's Great Fast. The foods abstained from are meat, fish, eggs, and dairy products, wine, and oil. According to some traditions, only olive oil is abstained from. In others, all vegetable oils. While wine and oil are permitted on Saturdays, Sundays, and a few feast days, and fish is permitted on Palm Sunday as well as the Annunciation when it falls before Palm Sunday, and caviar is permitted on Lazarus Saturday. Meat and dairy are prohibited entirely until the fast is broken on Easter. So that's really complicated. Yeah, the caviar thing surprised me.
That's interesting. I've never heard that.
Feel like I've never even heard of Lazarus Saturday. I feel like I would. That could be a new tradition in my house. Caviar on Lazarus Saturday.
When is Lazarus Saturday?
That's a great question.
That's a really great question. Since I'm the only one who's allowed to Google during this quiz, I will look it up for you.
On you, bro.
Lazarus Saturday is the day before Palm Sunday.
Oh.
And it commemorates the raising of Lazarus from the Gospel of John, which was a time when the Jewish religious leaders, those Pharisees, began to get really freaked out by Jesus and decided they needed to do something drastic to get rid of him. Because, healing people is problematic enough, but raising the dead, that can't stand. Mm-hmm. So, Lazarus Saturday.
Fascinating.
That's a new one. Our Orthodox brothers and sisters also pray more, read more, attend extra liturgies, and ironically enough, place a heavy emphasis on joy throughout the season of Lent. That may be why you haven't heard complaining, Sarah.
Yeah, no complaining.
There is a certain word that they use even more heavily during Lent than outside of Lent, even though many other Christians abstain from this word entirely during the Lenten season. Which word is that?
You're going to make us say it.
The A word? Is that the word you're talking about?
You can't say that. It's Lent.
It rhymes with Shmallelujah. Is that the one?
That is the one. The Hebrew word for praise the Lord.
There you go.
We're safe. We didn't technically say it.
So I found that really interesting that during this fasting season, the Orthodox actually pump their services even more full of praises, which is interesting.
Well, I've heard before, even in our tradition, we hold that Sundays are not really part of Lent.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, you'll see.
So it's interesting that we still, even though we aren't fasting on Sundays, we still fast from that. I don't know. That's sort of an oddity.
It is. Good point.
I wonder if that was always the case, or if that's something that came around as we started fasting less and less.
Yeah, now I want to know where that comes from, because
I think it probably goes back to that medieval tradition of you get a little ease up on Sunday, but not really.
Right, but the current practice that we have in most Lutheran churches is that during Lent we fast from that word. And when did that begin in Lutheran churches? Did that begin way back at the beginning? Has that been something that was pre-Lutheran churches and we carried it with us?
I actually didn't know that was a thing.
Something for a future.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Future trivia quiz, maybe.
I think so. And I think you're quizzing the quiz mistress, which is
That's bad form.
Out of bounds.
Turning the tables. We're the ones that are supposed to be stumped.
Yeah.
Yes, we'll say a future quiz unless I'm able to
Okay,
really,
fair enough.
really hit the Google
Fair
hard in the next 2 minutes.
Yeah, that's okay.
For our listeners out there, if you know the history of the fasting from the Hebrew word for praise the Lord during the season of Lent, and if you know why that word, and if you know also why it is that even though Lenten fasting is somewhat relieved on Sundays, we continue our fast on Sundays throughout Lent. If you know, help us out. We have stumped ourselves, which is a thing that has never happened on this quiz before. So thank you, Erin. You're really good at this.
I feel so proud.
Joke's on you because the tables are turned. We have now come to question number 13, which is our essay question for the quiz.
Ah.
Yes.
Now, Lenten fasting, of course, is not something that in Lutheran Church is prescribed. Your pastor will not give you a list of foods and hours and days of things that you can and cannot eat or drink or do or observe. We do have extra church services that we all go to together, but in Lutheran churches, the practice of Lent and of Lenten fasting is largely left up to the conscience of the individual believer. And so that's your essay question for the day. What do Lent and Lenten fasting mean to all of you personally?
Well, I'm also one who loves Lent. I've always loved the music of Lent, and honestly, I've always enjoyed the services on Wednesday nights and the soup suppers that would go beforehand. All of that is something I really enjoy. I especially love the way it all leads up to Easter. There's something in Holy Week that really it won't quite convey it correctly fully, but there's this pageantry that goes with it that I love the way they have everything sort of building on itself, and it's beautifully done, and it really every year it surprises me how meaningful it is and the impact that it has every year, even though it's like, I know what's going to happen and still every year. As far as fasting, I've gone through different phases. Most typically what I've done, and this year I haven't done anything, and I don't know if it's just because I'll just blame it on the pandemic, but typically I've added something. That's been my approach to fasting. Instead of giving something up, I've added something to or substituted something. So I've done different things, but this year I haven't. There wasn't anything that I don't know. There wasn't anything that came to me that I was like, I want to do this year. Sometimes I've done it where I've started midway through, and so it could yet be that I will find something that I'm like, yes, this is going to be my practice the rest of Lent. But things that I've done in the past have been things like I will memorize hymns, or one year I worked to totally review the small catechism, all of the explanations for all of the different parts. Another year I gave up listening to radio in my car, and so I just sat and thought while I drove, which was surprisingly impactful. That would not work this year since I don't commute anywhere, so that wouldn't be a good choice for this year. So anyway, those are my experiences with Lent and fasting, and it really has been different every year. I don't have a consistent practice.
I also love Lent. Maybe it's a Lutheran thing to love Lent. Like, we like feeling the weightiness of the Lenten season, and we like revel in our Lutheranness during. I don't know. Maybe that's not a thing.
No, I think you're right.
Austerity is our love language.
Yep. But I love the music. The Lenten hymns are some of my favorites. We all know that Easter Vigil is also my favorite service, which is like half Lent, half not. And that flip of when it goes from Lent to Easter is like the highlight of my whole liturgical year. It is, I think we're talking about this in an upcoming podcast episode, so stay tuned. But if you've never been to an Easter vigil, like go find one. It is amazing. Or you can watch online this year because everyone's services are online. It's going to be amazing. Anyway, I have not grown up in a family that fasts. That was never part of our tradition during Lent. So my husband and I sort of halfway did the adding something for a couple of years, but we've never really done anything all that structured. One year we added eating at Chick-fil-A once a week. I'm not sure that counts.
That's a good one.
But we definitely did that one year when we lived in Chicago. I think, I don't know, it's an odd thing also being a church musician, because when we enter the season of Lent, our choir practices are after Wednesday night services. So I don't know if that's like part of the extra meditation, because we're at church until like 9:00 at least on Wednesday nights. Like it is time and it is effort to be a musician during the season of the church year. And you're giving up things in order to do that.
True.
Which I mean, I love doing the music. It's also strange because when we hit Lent, we start practicing Easter music. So we're in a midweek Lent service and we're singing this somber Lenten music, and then we go to choir practice and we're singing all these Easter Sunday hymns.
Everyone fasts from the Hebrew word for praise the Lord, except choristers.
Like it's this weird place of you literally get Lent and Easter like back to back every Wednesday night, which is kind of cool too, because the dichotomy of those things back to back is so present all the time. I don't know. I think I really realized that last week when we were singing some like really heavy Lamentations, Carl Schall's Lamentations, like some seriously heavy stuff. And then like we pull out Awake My Heart with Gladness. Like it's Easter.
Remix.
But I don't know, it's cool. So that's kind of been my experience. I do love that our liturgies are kind of pared back on Sundays too. It's a little bit more somber. It's that extra reflection and meditation on what this season is and what we're looking forward to during Easter Vigil.
I agree with all of the above. I love Lent. It is more somber, I think, and it allows us greater opportunities to focus on, Christ's passion and be mindful of like how the story ends. I love the music. I love going to Wednesday night service. I don't think I've ever been to an Easter vigil, by the way. I guess we'll talk about that. I mean, I am this year because my husband's preaching it. But yeah, I mean, it's just such, and I don't know if it's a Lutheran thing. Maybe it is, but there's something just really special about Lent that is different from like Christmas or Epiphany or, because there's so much other like for, Christmas, at least the holiday season, and you've got, a lot of secular buy-in. So I feel like this is sort of a really sacred time for Christians to just come together and meditate on why we celebrate. Of course, if you live in the Midwest, I know here in St. Louis, Lent is becoming more embraced by the secular world simply because of fish fries. Like, people will go on their fish fry extravaganza parades or whatever and go to a different fish fry it's fish fry season, everybody. Let's do it. And I mean, that's fine. It is what it is. But I appreciate being able to separate that and be able to celebrate in such a special way with my fellow Christian brothers and sisters. I just rambled and pretty much just said everything that Erin and Sarah said in like a really weird and awkward way.
You're right that Lent is just ours. When it comes to Christmas or Easter or, the non-Christian folks, they share those with us. And that's fine. There's joy to go around. There's no Santa Claus or Easter Bunny equivalent for Lent. We get it all to ourselves. Everyone else is really sick of their New Year's resolutions. They're not looking for any more disciplines. Right. But for us, it's ours. And that's a cool thing about it. For me, if I can answer my own essay question.
Do it.
Lent is a time to, you guys probably know this already. I hate February. I hate the first part of March. I really do. It's a bleak time of year.
Mhm.
And Lent gives me a theological framework for dealing with that and leaning into it
Yeah.
and drawing wisdom out of it. And I'm really grateful that it exists, that this, let's face it, suffering has meaning and purpose. And so I do try to use it as a time to do some hard thing, whether adding a discipline or giving up something that's not good for me or that's getting in the way of my relationship with God. This year was one of the hardest things I've ever done, which is give up caffeine for Lent. It took me a full 3 weeks to taper down before Ash Wednesday, and I was a mess. But that's why I had to do it, because when my kids said you should give up caffeine, and my first thought was anything but that. If there's anything in your life about that isn't God, that you say, I'll give up anything but that, put it on your short list for a Lenten fast.
You got a problem.
And the thing that has amazed me is I was so terrified to give up this thing that has been a daily part of my life for more than 20 years. Like, it's been literally 20 years since I went a day without caffeine. And it has not been that hard. And it says to me that God is bigger and more important than any of our bad habits, any of those things.
Mm-hmm.
They all just sort of melt away in comparison. So it's been good. It's been good. I will come out of this, I think, a stronger, hopefully wiser person. And we'll see what we give up next year. Or add in. I love the adding in. I think in a previous year, I added in reading a chapter in the Bible every morning before I got out of bed. And I'm still doing that like 4 years later. So this can be a time of some real important habit forming that can stick with you more than just throughout Lent.
Yeah.
Okay, time to circle back to Martin Luther. Now, Luther did quite a lot of fasting, especially as a young monk when he was still trying to sort of like earn his way to heaven. There are some historians, and I don't have a source for this. I'll try to look one up and put it in the show notes, but I know I've read it, that said he basically destroyed his bowels. Excessive fasting, which actually was really good for Lutheranism.
So unhappy
because Luther had to spend a lot of time in the loo, where he did a lot of his best work. So
I love it. I love it so much.
Martin the Lou
Luther. Am I right?
But that was as a young man. But how would you characterize a slightly more mature Luther's general stance on fasting, as expressed in his 1520 treatise on the freedom of the Christian, also known as Christian liberty? So this is multiple choice. Last question. I'll go easy on you. Yes. So here are your choices for Luther's stance on fasting. A, yes, do it. B, yes, but. C, no, but. Or D, absolutely not.
C.
Yeah.
I am not going to go with C. Okay, hang on a second. Give me the first two again.
Yes, do it. Yes, but. No, but. Absolutely not.
I'm going with
I'm gonna
A.
go B. I'm gonna
A.
change my answer. I'm doing
Oh
B.
boy.
Okay, ABC
Who
is
is it?
occupied.
Bree, you win the prize. Here's this quote, and I actually pulled this out into our Mardi Gras quiz last year, and again, hat tip to Wide Wolfmueller for having put this on his blog a few years ago, and I go back to it frequently when I'm thinking about this subject. The quote goes like this: "Every man may easily instruct himself in what measure and with what distinctions he ought to chasten his body. He will fast, watch, and labor, just as much as he sees to suffice for keeping down the wantonness and concupiscence of the body." I love that word.
Concupiscence.
"But those who pretend to be justified by works are looking not to the mortification of their lusts, but only to the works themselves, thinking that, if they can accomplish as many works and as great ones as possible, all is well with them and they are justified." So, to translate, dig deep. You know what kind of fast you need, in Lent or out of it. You can give up eggs or dairy or meat or wine or chocolate or caffeine or social media or Netflix or whatever, but disciplining your body and your mind are good things that allow your soul to be ever more captive and dependent upon and aware of that dependence on the word of Christ. But, and here's your yes but do not ever fall prey to the temptation that your fasts save you or even add one jot or tittle to your own personal holiness, because they don't.
Not
It's
one
Jesus,
tittle.
Not one tittle.
Not a one.
It is Jesus' fast on the cross from Maundy Thursday to Easter Vigil that is the one that matters.
Amen.
And Hebrew word for praise the Lord for that.
Yes.
You guys are good.
That was a good one.
These quizzes are always fun.
They are, and I feel like it's been a long time since we had a good quiz.
Who won?
Not like we had a bad quiz previously or anything. It's just been a long time. Been a long time since we had a quiz, and they're always good. That's how I should have phrased that.
So, like, for real, are we going to declare a winner? Like, do I win? Like,
Are we going to declare a winner?
Am I the best Lutheran here?
Why would you be the winner?
I got the Lutheran question right.
You're the
All
most
right, let's-
Lutheran, Brie.
Because you got
Let's
one
see
more
here.
question.
I'm the
Sarah
best
got the
Lutheran.
Orthodox question right, and
Wow.
Erin
I stumped the quizzer.
Erin stumped the
yikes.
quizzer.
Yeah.
You
That's
know what?
like
We're
worth
just
1,000
gonna,
points.
We're all...
yeah, actually, Erin stumped the quizzer. So I'm going to just have to give this one to her, because otherwise this is the one where the points are made up and don't matter.
Still the
Oh, Brie's so sad now.
Yay. It's Lent.
Whatever. I'll go brood about it.
But, you know, Erin, consider yourself lucky. Normally, I'm going to, like, punish people who stump the quizzer.
This is just
Not
the
live on the
first
podcast
from
anyway.
here on out. Uh-huh.
This will be off
Yeah.
the books.
Oh,
Well, thanks,
boy.
you guys. I loved this topic, and I was really glad to learn some new things. Like, for example, what Lent means. I seriously did not know that. And I'm really happy that I do now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for reals.
Now we all have some knowledge for when we get back together for parties, whenever that happens.
Trivia night.
Quiz
You'd
people.
be the
on what
smarty
words
pants
mean.
at the soup supper table.
right.
Yes. There you
Right.
go. Everyone will
More
love
on
you for
soup
that.
suppers soon, though.
Slice. Very nice.
Teaser.
There were a number of teasers in this episode.
Yes.
So what
Giving
happens
people
when
a-
you plan ahead?
Isn't it amazing?
I know, right? Imagine it.
Well, ladies, maybe you were stumped. Maybe you knew all the answers. I don't know. You can share that with us, though. If you have like alternative answers or your own essay question answer, we'd love to see those in the Facebook group. You can find us in the Lutheran Ladies Lounge on Facebook. You can also find all of our episodes, including all of the previous quizzes, some of which were mentioned today, and they are all fantastic. Mardi Gras quiz, still my favorite, most hilarious ever. Find all of those episodes at kfuo.org/Lutheran Ladies Lounge or on your favorite podcasting app. You're listening to the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast. I'm Sarah.
I'm the winner.
I'm the best Lutheran.
And I'm the quiz Miz.
Views and opinions expressed on the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast may not represent the official position of the management or ownership of KFUO Radio, the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. The Lutheran Ladies Lounge is produced by KFUO Radio and available at kfuo.org or wherever you get your podcasts. Join our community on Facebook in the Lutheran Ladies Lounge.